psychic Ingo Swann claimed to have worked for the CIA. His task was to remote view the dark side of the moon and search for signs of extraterrestrial presence. When asked about the existence of extraterrestrials, Swann not only affirmed their presence, but also revealed that they were constructing something on the far side of the moon. According to Swann, these aliens were not friendly. This sounded like a madman sharing a far-fetched fantasy in the hope to sell more books. However, with the release of CIA documents on the Stargate Project, it confirmed Swann's involvement in the program. In this video, we will share Ingo Swann's incredible story, from his book Penetration about his alien experiences and the alien bases that are currently on the moon. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe and leave a comment below with your thoughts. So let's dive into this. As a child, Ingo Swann displayed psychic potential, which caught the attention of his family. As he grew older, he decided to explore this talent further by participating in ESP experiments. Initially, researchers tested Swann's ability to influence plants and manipulate environmental temperatures using his mind. Swann's success in these experiments garnered the interest of more scientists. A few years later, Swann found his niche when he became part of a study conducted by the American Society of Psychical Research. This study involved Swann sitting in a chair, attempting to project his consciousness into sealed boxes containing symbols that he would then try to decipher. During an experiment, Swann was asked to observe the contents of a box. To the researchers' disappointment, Swann reported seeing nothing but darkness. However, Swann explained that the darkness was due to a burnt-out light bulb inside the box. Intrigued, the researcher opened the box and confirmed that the light was indeed out. In that moment, a new discovery was made. Ingo Swann's early successes in remote viewing caught the attention of the Stanford Research Institute, known as SRI for short. SRI, known for their Project Stargate, had been remote viewing various locations worldwide for years. Impressed by Swann's abilities, they wondered if he could also remotely view other places within the solar system. One experiment involved Swann projecting his consciousness to the planet Jupiter. Initially, Swann was hesitant to participate as he only wanted to remote view things that could be confirmed. However, SRI informed him that Jupiter was chosen because NASA had probes en route to the planet, which piqued Swann's interest. He made several observations about Jupiter, including a hydrogen mantle, rotating storms resembling cyclones, high infrared readings, and details about the colors of the clouds and ice crystals. These observations were later confirmed by the Pioneer probe sent by NASA. The probes that were sent to study Jupiter's atmosphere confirmed several important findings. Despite skeptics arguing that these observations could have been deduced, they provided valuable insights. For instance, the probes revealed that Jupiter has violent storms, which are visible from Earth, as well as the presence of colored clouds, infrared emissions, and atmospheric ice crystals, which may not be visible but can be inferred. However, one exceptional discovery was made by a scientist named Swann. He claimed to have observed a ring around Jupiter, similar to Saturn's ring, but much smaller and closer to the planet. Swann described this ring as consisting of dust and tiny asteroids. This finding was not anticipated from Earth, and even the Pioneer probes that had been sent earlier did not detect this faint ring. However, when the Voyager probe passed by Jupiter it confirmed the existence of the ring. Fast forward some time and Swann finds himself being offered another remote viewing job by a man he refers to in his book as Mr. Axelrod. Mr. Axelrod is making a proposal to Swann. He claims to represent a group that wants Swann to take part in a remote viewing project. In exchange for his participation, Swann would receive a payment of $1,000 per day in cash. Adjusted for inflation, this amount is equivalent to over $6,000 per day in today's currency. The next morning, Axelrod informs Ingo Swann that his task for the day is remote viewing the moon. Swann is initially confused by this, but as he proceeds, he is given a list of coordinates to observe. As he goes through them one by one, he notices some locations where he doesn't see anything, while others reveal large cliffs, craters, and dunes of white powder, all typical features of the moon. Eventually, Swann comes across something intriguing and puzzling. He describes seeing tracks on the surface that appear to have been made by tractors or some type of machinery. He also observes patterns that resemble those created by wind, even though the moon lacks an atmosphere. Surprisingly, Swann senses the presence of an atmosphere. He then moves into a crater filled with a green haze, where he notices a diffuse light. This strikes him as odd since diffuse light requires an atmosphere to scatter it. Swann decides to investigate further and gets closer to the light source. To his surprise, he sees something resembling an airfield, complete with large structures like hangars, roads, towers, and machinery. These structures span across craters and chasms, with bridges connecting them. All these observations point to significant industrial activity. Additionally, Swann notices perfectly round holes cut into the rocks, as if they were intentionally dug. Using large earth-moving equipment, Swann moves to a different location and discovers structures that emit light of various colors. Intrigued, Swann approaches for a closer look and notices that the domes have windows. Despite the darkness, he can see a fine mist inside the structures, along with an eerie green glow. As Swann gets even closer, he observes humanoid figures that bear a striking resemblance to humans. This area appears to be highly active, with the beings engaged in various tasks. Swann continues to observe and document everything he sees. Suddenly, the number of beings increases rapidly, catching Swann's attention. They all turn towards the window where Swann has projected himself, making him feel uneasy. He realizes that they can see him. In a calm but urgent manner, Axelrod instructs Swann to come back immediately, away from that place. Swann uses his willpower to bring his consciousness back and slowly opens his eyes. Turning to Axelrod, Swann remarks, "You already know that they're psychic, don't you?" Taking a deep breath, Axelrod responds, "The experiment is over. It's time for you to go home." Fast forward, 1.5 years later, Axelrod gets back in contact with him and asks him how his remote viewing success rate is doing. Swann replies about 50%. Axelrod says, "When you get to 65%, write the number on a piece of paper and leave it on your desk. Tell no one we'll be in touch." Axelrod hangs up the phone without saying much. In the following year, there is no communication from Axelrod. However, he finally achieves the 65% success remote viewing rate. Just as he was instructed, he writes down the percentage on a slip of paper and leaves it on his desk before going home for the night. The next morning, he discovers that the note is missing and there is a faint powder-like substance on his desk. In the powder, someone has scribbled the words "expect contact" and "a few days after Ingo." Swann, who is told to expect contact, coincidentally encounters Axelrod at the university cafeteria. Axelrod approaches Swann, shakes his hand, and asks if he can have Swann's company for 3 or 4 days. Swann agrees and inquires about their destination, to which Axelrod responds with a smile. "Have you ever seen a UFO?" After flying for hours in a private jet, the passengers landed in the middle of the night. Although unsure of the exact location, he assumed it was Alaska due to their northward route. Swann and the others, including Mr. Axelrod and the twins, disembarked and entered an unmarked van. They then embarked on a 2-hour journey through winding mountain roads until they reached a stop under a group of pine trees. From there, they hiked the rest of the way until they reached their final destination. Axelrod whispered that he should observe in complete silence and remain as still as possible, as their location was sensitive to heat, noise, and motion detection. Swann's eyes widened in realization, but Axelrod's finger to his lips reminded him to stay quiet. The 4 men sat in silence for a long while until one of the twins made a hand gesture, signifying the beginning of something. The scene started with a fog rolling off the lake, but gradually it transformed. Swann observed that the fog began emitting neon blue light, which then shifted to an angry purple hue. As the fog thickened, a triangular-shaped craft emerged from the lake, measuring approximately feet wide. The craft emitted a pulsing hum, and beams of light shot out, targeting various locations in the area. Looking back, Swann witnessed water from the lake being mysteriously drawn into the craft, resembling a reverse waterfall. The drive back to the airport was filled with a heavy silence. Swann, deep in thought, gazed out the window, trying to process the extraordinary events he had just witnessed. Upon arrival at the airport, the sun was beginning to rise. Swann finally shared his conclusion with Axelrod. The craft they encountered was an unmanned drone on a resupply mission to supply the moon with resources, particularly water. "Axelrod, while not fully agreeing with this idea, also doesn't outright disagree. After exchanging pleasantries and thanking Swann, Axelrod gestures towards a plane where Ingo Swann will be flying back alone. From that point on, Axelrod and the twins are never seen again. This story was from his book Penetration, The Question of Extraterrestrial and Human Telepathy. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.